Fascinating facts about croissants to blow your mind. Everyone loves French croissants, but how much do you know about them? From its Viennese origins to the wacky things people do with croissants, here are some interesting, unusual, and random French croissant facts. Number 1. Who invented French croissants? No one knows for sure who invented the modern-day French croissant recipe, so it's a tricky question to answer. However, it's a commonly accepted belief that the croissant is based on the kipfrel or kipfrel, a popular Austrian breakfast staple shaped like a crescent moon, which can be traced back to the 13th century, maybe even further back. But that's only half the truth. While it may be true that the croissant is an adaptation of the plainer, more bread-like Austrian kipfrel, somewhere along the way, the recipe changed, which gave birth to a buttery, flaky, leavened puff pastry the world knows now as a French croissant. You could say that the kipfrel is the grandfather of the croissant. Number 2. How did the kipfrel become a French croissant? Auguste Zeng is credited with popularizing the kipfrel in France, the grandfather of the croissant. In 1838, Auguste Zeng, an Austrian artillery officer, journalist, and entrepreneur from Vienna, opened an upscale Viennese bakery in Paris at 92 Rue de Richelieu, where he sold bread and pastries from his homeland. Auguste Zeng didn't invent the kipfrel, but he is credited with popularizing the kipfrel and other Viennese bread and pastries with his homeland thanks to his knack for marketing. Then around 1849, 10 years after Zeng introduced the Austrian kipfrel to France, censorship was lifted in Austria, so he returned to Vienna to found Die Presse, a daily newspaper that still exists today. Number 3. The first croissants tasted nothing like they do today. Despite the switch in the name after Zeng left France in 1849, from the Austrian-German name kipfrel to the French word croissant, the croissant still tasted more like a bread roll than the crunchy and light croissant we know today. After all, form alone does not make croissant. That's because the kipfrel croissant recipe hadn't changed yet. It would be years before that happened. Number 4. There are only 8 ingredients in a French croissant recipe. The basic ingredients for a classic French croissant au beurre are 1. Butter, 2. Flour, 3. Water, 4. Milk, 5. Yeast, 6. Sugar, 7. Salt, 8. Egg. Number 5. What's the difference between puff pastry dough and croissant dough? Puff pastry dough, known as pâte de feuilleté or feuilletage, only contains flour, water, salt, and butter. Croissant dough, known as pâte de levée feuilletée, has additional ingredients which puff pastry does not: yeast and usually milk and egg. The milk makes the dough taste richer, while the yeast make pastry rise much higher than ordinary puff pastry dough. Another way to look at it is croissant dough has active or living ingredients in it, which is the yeast. Puff pastry does not. Number 6. Croissants used to be for the wealthy. Baking ingredients like eggs, butter, cream, chocolate, and sugar were very expensive in the 1800s, something only high society and royalty could afford. The high price for these ingredients made the croissant too expensive for the average person in the mid-1800s. It wasn't until the 19th century, when prices decreased, that the average French person could afford the rich person's bread and pastries, such as white bread and croissant. Number 7. What is vienwazuri? Vienwazuri is a category of baked goods, usually breakfast, made from yeast-leavened dough, similar to bread or puff pastry, but with additional ingredients: yeast, eggs, butter, milk, cream, or sugar. The addition of these ingredients gives viennoiserie a sweeter and much richer character than regular puff pastry dough. Examples of viennoiserie include croissant, pain au chocolat, pain au raisin, brioche, Danish cheese, chaussons aux pommes, and many more. Number 8. Croissants are the number 1 viennoiserie consumed in France. It should come as no surprise that croissants are the number 1 viennoiserie consumed in France. 3 out of 4 French people eat croissants, while chocolate croissants, known as pain au chocolat, are a close second, followed by brioche and pain au raisin. Number 9. Why are croissants shaped like a crescent? There is a lot of fake food lore, interesting mythology, and colorful tales surrounding the origins of the croissant and crescent-shaped bread and pastries. But the truth is, no one knows for sure how crescent-shaped bread came to be. There are theories though. We know, for example, that crescent-shaped bread is ancient. It may be the oldest surviving bread shape in existence today. We also know that the crescent shape was an important symbol in the ancient world. Over 5,000 years ago, long before the Greek and Roman civilization blossomed or the Bible was written, the ancient Sumerians and the black-headed ones lived in the southern part of what is now Iraq. The Sumerians worshipped many gods, including Nana, god of the moon, whose symbol was the crescent moon. The crescent moon symbol, along with the star, were ubiquitous at the time. It was found on seal impressions, pottery, amulets, earrings, murals, and probably made its impression on food. Number 10. 6 pastries that share a common ancestor with the French croissant. The French weren't the only ones that took the Austrian kipfrel to create something unique to their country. Number 1. Germany, Logen croissant. Leave to the Germans to make a flaky, buttery croissant and cross it with the wonderfully thick, smooth, and dark brown crust of a pretzel. It tastes like a croissant but has the texture of a pretzel, and it's brilliant. Number 2. Switzerland, Gipfel. In case you didn't know, Switzerland has 3 official languages: Italian, French, and Swiss German, with Swiss German being the language most spoken. It's very different from the German spoken in Germany. Throughout most of Swiss German-speaking Switzerland, you'll find gipfels, which are similar to croissants and just as abundant as croissants are in France. When you get to the French part of Switzerland, gipfels are called croissants. Number 3. Italy, cornetto or Naples brioche. The Italian cornetto from southern Italy looks like a croissant, but don't say that in Italy because someone might get offended. Cornetto, Italian for little horn, is a variation of the Austrian kipfrel and the French croissant. In northern Italy, it's called Naples brioche. It has less butter than the French croissant and is more brioche-like. It is often filled with filling or sprinkled with powdered sugar. Number 4. Poland, St. Martin croissant. The St. Martin croissant, Rogan Świętomarciński, is legally protected in the EU. It's traditionally prepared in Poznan and some parts of the Greater Poland region for St. Martin's Day on November 11, which also happens to be Poland's national day. A genuine St. Martin's croissant is made from a puff pastry, but it's filled with a white poppy seed filling, vanilla, crushed dates or figs, and coated with a sugar icing and sprinkled with ground nuts. At the 150-year-old Poznan Croissant Museum in Poland, visitors can learn how to produce a croissant according to the original recipe. Number 5. Danish pastries. No doubt you're familiar with Danishes, which are a combination of brioche-type bread and croissant dough, leavened puff pastry lightly drizzled with sugary frosting. Danish pastries come in all shapes and sizes, and the interior is usually filled with remonts, which is filling commonly made of nuts, sugar, or fruit. Other fillings include apple, marzipan, brown sugar, and cinnamon. Number 6. Italy, stuffed tagliatella. When I took my first bite of stuffed tagliatella in Sicily, it immediately reminded me of a croissant. Yes, it was that good. Stuffed tagliatella, which means many leaves or layers, sometimes called a lobster tail in English, is a shell-shaped or lobster tail-shaped Italian pastry native to Campania in southern Italy. Stuffed tagliatella is made with puff pastry dough, not leavened, and is usually filled with a variety of sweet fillings depending on the bakery.